Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. Japan is already devastated by war when a new crisis emerges in the form of a giant monster. Yes, folks, this is our raw reaction review for the long-awaited Godzilla Minus One. Alrighty, Luke, so we've arrived at Godzilla Minus One, the latest Godzilla entry in the franchise from Toho, and of course the franchise in general. We actually just discussed Monarch not too long ago. We've been covering that. I've been doing the week-to-week spoilers, and I know we'll probably get you in there for at least the last one to talk about the series as a whole. But you enjoyed that. You said you had some very positive things to say in our spoiler-free review.
Yeah, I think, Monarch had a really interesting take, a lot of great story to it, which I think, some fans are really wanting nowadays, especially with the legendary installments there. But, Monarch, at least first 8 episodes, a lot of great stuff going on, a lot of great monsters as well. So that really did get me. I was never, not on board with Godzilla. It was just kind of there for me. But I'll say Monarch really gave me a great narrative that really allowed me to sink my teeth into.
Yep, and that's why I wanted to start with that, because I got to ask, is this your first time seeing a Japanese Godzilla in theaters, like one that Toho put out?
Oh, absolutely. Definitely in theaters. I don't know if maybe I had stumbled upon them as a kid. If I did, I don't remember them. I still have yet to see Shin Godzilla. I didn't make the time to see it prior to this release, but it's definitely on my list. But yes, this is the first time I've actually been in the theater to see any Toho installments here.
Great. And, this is not my first rodeo. Again, I think the one that sticks out to me the most, I remember I saw a re-release of the one, I think it was Godzilla 2000. Back in the day, I saw that at kind of like an outdoor gathering theater experience. It was at some event somewhere down with my cousins, and that was fun for me. Obviously I've seen all of the MonsterVerse ones in theaters, but 2016's Shin Godzilla was a really big one for me. I went out and saw that one. Unlike Godzilla Minus One, that one was a slow rollout. So this is kind of a landmark Godzilla film here in the sense that, this came out a month ago in Japan. So they've been able to sit on it for a month. Spoilers have been out there. I've been avoiding them like the plague. But now we finally get to sit down and see it. We're seeing it essentially 2 days early because of the fan event. So that's always wonderful and kind. But we got to go see the film. Luke, how do you feel as not the biggest Godzilla fan, just a passive Godzilla fan about Godzilla Minus One?
Going into this, I had seen the trailers. We covered it a little bit on the Sunday Scaries. So I kind of knew what to expect. I would say at least a little bit. But overall, this one, I gotta say, I've seen a lot of the MonsterVerse stuff, like you said, Godzilla, Kong and Godzilla, Monarch. Honestly, from a narrative perspective, I gotta say this is probably at that #1 spot for me. Again, I haven't seen Shin Godzilla yet, and I know you speak highly of it. So that's definitely, I may have to pencil that one in terms of maybe that takes the #1 spot. But I gotta say, overall, this was just a lot of great stuff they offered here.
Yeah, and so just to kind of pick your brain a bit, because we really, it's cold up here now in Ohio, so we didn't really get time to sit there and talk about it. But I'm curious, before I get into my thoughts, was this just more were you just surprised with kind of the level of seriousness and kind of how they handle Godzilla over in his home country, or was it more just the amount of character development and story that we got as opposed to the monster stuff?
I would say a little bit of everything. I will say I was really surprised at the character work here. I did not think we were going to dive that in depth with it. And I think they treated Godzilla, he's felt very special, I would say, in this, where you do see him, but it's not like, you're having very long periods with him. And they treat him like such a threat to the people themselves, actually, which I really enjoyed that take. So I think there was a lot of tension here, a lot of great character work. They come from a very interesting perspective, which I didn't really know that they were going to go that route with it. But it's very emotional. So I think overall this is such a well-rounded film from the way I know we're going to dive more into it, but the way they use Godzilla overall, and then just these characters, I really felt myself attaching myself to them.
Yeah, I guess to get into my thoughts here, I really enjoyed the film. I definitely second a lot of the sentiments that I've heard from diehard Godzilla fans, from Godzilla fans, over in Japan who've been able to talk, again, spoilers, and they've been very kind, and they haven't been able to post too much, but they did say there's a lot of great moments, there's a lot of standout moments, and I will say in a lot of my big positives, some of those being the time period. I love that. I love that from the announcement. I love that from the brief synopsis we got when we just got the poster, and that we were going back to post World War II. I thought that was such a cool concept. It's always something that I've wanted them to go back to, being such a big fan of that original Godzilla film. I think that is such a special movie in a bottle. It feels very detached from the rest of the series if you go back and watch it. So I was really hoping for a lot of that, and in a lot of ways it does. I really enjoyed the special effects. I thought that they were great. Especially, like I said, we made a joke about it on our way out the door. For this, being from Toho, from Japan, it's one of those things where it's no secret that they don't have as much money to throw at the screen as like an American production when it comes to the Hollywood system. Like the Hollywood system is just ridiculous amounts of money being thrown at the screen, like almost to an absurd amount. So there were times when I definitely could be like, okay, he was a little jumbly there. He looked a little weird walking in there. But I forgive that stuff because overall it's like the presentation, when they really need it to work, it works. Like when he's swimming through the water, you see all the close-ups on his face and everything. It's like, it looks great. And as always, one of the things that I praise about Toho when it comes to their beloved monster here is they're not afraid to take risks and change things about Godzilla. That is why I love films like Shin Godzilla, which I would say takes the most risk out of anything that we've ever seen on film for Godzilla. But this film definitely does that, and I appreciated it. I appreciate the human story. I have some gripes with it, but we'll save that. But yeah, those are I would say my big pluses about the film, just as a Godzilla fan and as a film fan.
Yeah, and going into some of the CGI, I think there are some noticeable moments, but it's nothing that really takes you out of the film at all. I think if you see something a little bit questionable, I think it recovers itself very quickly.
It does.
There's a particular scene in here. There's an opening here, which I mean, there's no secret. There's going to be Godzilla attacks in here. The opening initial attack for me is absolutely captivating. I think from not knowing necessarily what to expect, and then to see kind of the carnage that ensues there, it had me fully on board because it's such a different take than what I'm used to seeing for Godzilla. And then there's another, you had mentioned the waters. They use water and kind of concealing Godzilla, almost like a real Jaws effect. And there are a few reminiscent, which I'm assuming is by no mistake. There are a few scenes in here that are very reminiscent of Jaws, which, put a smile on my face. There's one particular scene in there that I really enjoyed. But, that threat of Godzilla, for me, is really what sold me. And some of these kind of having him concealed and then having him fully on land and kind of seeing him in his whole stature, I think was a lot of fun because you get that variation here and you get different usages, I think, of Godzilla, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, director Takashi Yamazaki is the one who's helming this, and I definitely agree with you. I saw a lot of definitely personal little touches to certain films and things that were clearly big inspirations, other monster films, even other Godzilla films. There's little names and references on things like ships that if you are an avid fan like me, you'll catch. But I think that this is definitely very competent. It's a really nice just setting itself apart from the MonsterVerse, because I think that's another thing that I want to touch on in a later video. I'll probably save it as we get closer to wrapping up Monarch, or maybe once we get closer to the next King Kong versus Godzilla, because I think one of the best things that Toho does, other than taking risks, is that they are always doing their best to kind of play against whatever we're doing in the States with Godzilla, as Godzilla is so much of a hero over here. He is the good guy monster. He's the protector of Earth in a sense. You know, even when he was a little bit meaner in Kong versus Godzilla, he's still a good guy in the sense there. You know, you have two good guys fighting each other in that movie. They're not afraid over here to really lean into his roots of being a monster, a creature of, you know, that shouldn't be alive, of untold proportions, a tragic like victim of you know, the atomic age and what that brought to it. And I love how they play into that here. Again, those are the elements from 1954 I was really looking forward to seeing reincorporated here. There's another sequence involving a train that is definitely a huge homage to Godzilla 1954, and just what they were able to do now as opposed to what they could do back in the 50s. It was that was some of my favorite stuff. And I think, again, that just goes to Toho being unafraid to take risks and being able to push their creature into new heights and directions that, you know, us over in the States, we're just not ready to do that. I mean, I don't think they feel very safe doing it. Clearly Godzilla is very streamlined at this point. We know what to expect when he's on screen. It's still entertaining as hell, but it's always exciting to see what Toho's going to do, because you know that they're not going to just give you the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, this one really did bring a different vibe to it, especially if you're used to seeing that MonsterVerse stuff, which is really fast-paced, and you're seeing a lot of monster fighting for the most part. This one, dare I say, might be a little bit slower paced for a lot of people who are used to that MonsterVerse stuff. Just because, you know, they are really developing characters here and you're spending time with them. And again, I think Godzilla is treated very special in this one, where you're building up for his presence. You know, he just doesn't normally just pop up. But yeah, I think there are some maybe slower paced scenes in here that this is about, what, a 2-hour length film, I think.
Yeah, it's about 2 hours.
You know, and for the most part, I'll say, yeah, there's a lot of character work going on, which I think, you know, is very valuable. There are a couple slow moments in here. I think there's where they're setting up a plan. I think it kind of really lingers a little bit for me. But overall, say, I think only those pacing issues throughout are just questionable. But overall, for a 2-hour length film, I didn't really have that many pacing issues with it.
Yeah, the pacing was a bit of an issue with me, which I know I'm going to get shit from people who have seen Shin Godzilla, because there is so much just boardroom talking and so many things. But I feel like the thing that breaks that up is that it is just very bullet quick, like they're moving really fast paced through it. And it's not just like you're sitting in one segment of those government discussions or talking points. It's multiple within a span of like a minute or two. It's really interesting and it's really fast paced. So for this one, it being a lot slower, I didn't mind that. I don't mind slow movies at all. And I wouldn't call this a slow movie, but I would say that I agree with you. There are points when I was just kind of like, okay, this is starting to kind of drift a little too far to the left for me here, as far as just we're slowing back down. Like, let's kind of pick the pace up a little bit. Let's get back to where we were. Because I think that there's a lot of moments where this film has a lot of great energy, and I want it to go there. I second you that the intro to this is very exciting. I love the take that they do with that, because I can't really get into any of it because I would consider it a spoiler, especially for you know, people who don't know what to expect. Like you said, MonsterVerse fans may be going to see this. But how they handle that intro, and just I'll even come down to just say the size difference, and I'll leave it at that. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. It's exciting to me because it adds so much lore and things like that they've established throughout different iterations of the character. But to have it kind of be ground leveled again and just say, this is the start, this is where we're going, it's exciting and it's nice. It feels good. I would say though, one of my big issues that I had with the film um was kind of our lead character. I think that he's very well acted. I definitely think that there's some very emotional moments. I think that maybe they hit over the head a few too many times with a certain aspect to his character. That it's kind of like, we understand, we get it. Like, we don't have to go through this again. For me, and then I would also say that they do a little too much in the vein of like making him a bit more unlikable than I think I was hoping for. Like, there is a specific scene where I just was like, you're such a dick. Like, why would you do that? And it's like, maybe that's just the dad in me coming out, but like I was very much just kind of like teetering back and forth with like how much I really cared about our character, just because it's like, I just found him to be rather unlikable through a good majority of the film. But the side characters, all of his pals, all of his colleagues and things, they really make up for that, because I think there's a lot of great character, there's a lot of great energy, there's some great emotional moments between everybody, and I really loved them.
Yeah, and for me, I didn't have a problem with our lead character at all, actually. It brought in a handful of interesting dynamics, just from a social aspect. One of the things I know you had mentioned earlier in terms of the MonsterVerse is, Godzilla's the good guy, and I think what I liked about this take on it, and I do notice this a lot in more foreign films where they deal more with shades of gray, where it's not good, it's not bad, it's it's human nature, where we all have our great moments, we all have our not so great moments. And I think we do see this lead character here as a person who has been put through the ringer, in a sense, where there is a lot of emotional, mental things going on, especially coming back from war, and wanting to see your family and wanting things to be back to normal, but that it just can't be. And there's a line in here where he said, his war is not over. And I think, that resonates throughout the film all the way up to the very end, where it's something where, yes, in theory, the war can be over. But, for many soldiers that, you're still living in it. You still have that PTSD. And you remember what life was like before you went off to war. So I think, for me, all those emotional highs and lows that our character goes through are pretty well deserved. So I didn't really have too much of an issue there. And I thought, he related pretty well to all of our other characters. There's only one kind of, I would say, from a character aspect, decision aspect, they pull back on something that I really wish that they would have just really maybe followed through a little bit more with, because, I was, all on board for it, especially with the dynamic of our lead character. But then, there's a different outcome than you would expect. So for me, I think I was a little unhappy with that, but I see why the decision was made.
I agree. That was going to be my final point before we wrapped up here, was yes, that there is a moment in this where they do pull a punch in my decision, or in my understanding of it. It just, they do something in the film. It was very impactful. It got an audible "oh shit" from me. And I know a lot of our audience was like, whoa, like we weren't expecting that. And then they do kind of pull that punch, and it is one of those things where it's just like, it's sweet. I mean, it's bittersweet, I guess is the way I can say it without getting into spoilers. But, it is one of those things where it does stand out to me as like, again, I would, being a non-fan of something, I would be harsh on something for doing this. And just because I'm a big Godzilla fan, I'm not going to let that tamper down or let this get a pass, because I think that it is a little bit cheap. It's a little bit like, okay, I see why you're doing it. Yes, it works for some, but it's definitely, I think for me, a little bit counterintuitive to the tone and just the stakes and what we were going with. But at the end of the day, does it ruin the movie for me? No, I still think that this is really good. As far as Godzilla films go, it's definitely up there for me. I think that it well deserves it. It's a great take on the monster. I would love to see them continue this. But again, I'm also one of those people that would love to see them continue Shin Godzilla. I'm not going to sit here, and I think most of us who sat there for years after Shin Godzilla came out and said, when are we getting that sequel? I'm not going to sit here and cross my fingers. This might just be a one and done, which is fine. I'm so used to that. But at the same time, they do leave you with a little something where you're just like, I'm interested. Now, the funny thing about it is if you're not paying attention, there is one element that we both caught that I'm almost more interested in than the final little shot we get. But, you know, we're going to have to wait until everybody sees the film. Maybe when we do a podcast or something later on down the road, we can discuss it in detail, because I'm very curious to see what that means. And again, Toho, I'll give it to you. Not to spoil it for Shin for you, buddy, but the final couple of shots, they leave you on something where you're just like, whoa, what the hell? And then they don't give you anything. So I don't know. Godzilla Minus One is a recommend for me. It doesn't get to that must-see level, just because, again, I would still put Shin Godzilla over this, but I still think it's excellent. I still think it's a very high recommend, and obviously, if you're a Godzilla fan, you're going to go see it anyway. But if you're a film fan and you're looking for something cool, something that you should go support this weekend or in the coming weeks, Godzilla Minus One should definitely make that list.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not as well versed in the Godzilla universe, certainly the Toho aspect of this. So I don't have Shin Godzilla to kind of put my guard up. I'm going to say this is a must-see for me. You know, Monarch was a must-see. I think that's a great character work there, great story. For me, Godzilla Minus One is right up there. For me, surpassed it. I think, you know, the aspects that we're dealing with, the time period, the way they use Godzilla, and some of the actual visuals here are really leave an impact on you. So I'm going to say, if you're just a fan of the MonsterVerse and haven't really seen any of the Toho stuff like me, I'm going to say immerse yourself, go out and check this one out. I'm picking this one up on Blu-ray. Absolutely. I want to watch it again.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, yeah, this one, I urge you to go out. I don't know if showings are going to be limited or not, but if they are, try to make time and schedule this one to get to the theater to check out.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that you're right. This is, if you're only a MonsterVerse fan at this point, this is a really good entry point for you. I think it strikes a really nice balance between satisfying the MonsterVerse fans, and I think it will satisfy, well, obviously, Toho Godzilla fans. And it's definitely not as polarizing as something like a Shin Godzilla and just the interpretation. It's definitely a lot closer to the classic monster that we all know and love. And yeah, I mean, really, it's I might double back on this and give this a must see at some point down the road, but my heart of hearts tells me right now that it just didn't get there. But I do second everything Luke said. Go see this movie, go support it. I'm absolutely a fan, and I will definitely pick this thing up on Blu-ray. Crossing my fingers for a 4K, but none of the Godzilla films have been put on 4K just yet, so I doubt that's going to happen. But if it does, it will be here, and I will grab it for sure. So, and I look forward to seeing it again. I would definitely, I hope this hits the States on Blu-ray here shortly, so that way we can watch it again, because it is one that will be in my rotation for sure.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, guys, well, that's going to wrap us up here for our review of Godzilla Minus One. Let us know what you guys thought if you got to go check this thing out tonight. If not, and you're watching this just after the weekend, did you see it over the weekend? What did you like? Keep it spoiler-free down there for everybody, of course. And yeah, I mean, if you guys want it, go ahead and like the crap out of this video, hit that like button. And if you guys really want us to, I wouldn't mind doing a spoiler talk on this maybe sometime this weekend or early next week. So if you guys want it, comment down below. We get enough comments, maybe we'll sit down and talk for a little bit, because, you know, I'm, again, with you not being so well versed in Godzilla and this being your first exposure, I want to hear like your deep thoughts, and I think that would be a really great video, but we'll see if we can get there. So alrighty, guys, other than that, definitely check out what we got on the channel. Keep up with me on Monarch, and yeah, until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.